The alien woman walked slowly through the narrow streets of her city. Her head lowered, her steps heavy. The crowd around her whispered as she passed, their eyes sharp, their voices cruel. "She has no children," someone hissed. "She is useless," another added. Her heart felt heavier with every word. In her world, worth was measured by children. A woman who could not give birth was seen as broken, incomplete, a burden to her family and her people. She tried to ignore them, but their voices were like knives, cutting into her skin again and again. She had grown used to the pain, but it never became easier. At night, she sat alone in her small home. The silence pressed on her chest. Outside, families laughed. Children ran and played. Mothers watched with pride. But for her, there was only emptiness. No child's laughter, no hand to hold, only shadows. Her people had told her again and again that she was worthless, that she had failed, that her life had no meaning. Sometimes she believed them, sometimes she thought it would be better to disappear. But fate is strange, it often changes in a single moment. And her moment began on a cold evening. She was carrying water back from the well when she heard a sound behind her. Footsteps. She turned quickly. Her eyes narrowing, a human stood there, tall, different from her kind. His eyes calm, his hands empty. He did not look at her with pity. He did not look at her with disgust. He simply looked as if she were just another person. For a moment she was frozen. Why was a human here? Humans did not often walk through this part of the city. Her people did not welcome them. "Do you need help?" he asked softly, his voice steady. She tightened her grip on the bucket. "No," she replied quickly, her tone sharper than she meant. He only nodded, not offended, not mocking. "All right," he said. But he walked beside her anyway. The whispers returned, sharper than before. "Look at her. Now she walks with a human. Shameful." Her chest burned, but when she looked at him, he did not seem to hear them, or maybe he simply did not care. His calm face made her heart tremble. That night she could not sleep. Her mind replayed the moment, his voice, his steady eyes. She asked herself why a human would even notice her, why he would care. Was it a trick? Was it pity? Or something else? The next day, she saw him again, waiting near the well. He greeted her with a simple nod. No cruel words, no hidden laughter, just a nod, as if she were someone who mattered. For the first time in many years, she felt something stir inside her, something she thought she had lost forever. A small spark of hope, but hope was dangerous. She knew it could be crushed easily. She knew her people would not allow such things, and yet, she found herself looking for him each day, listening for his voice, feeling her chest grow lighter whenever he appeared. Still, the weight of her people's words never left her. Every insult, every whisper followed her, like chains dragging her down. On the fourth evening, the insults grew louder. One woman shouted openly, "You are nothing, even less than nothing. No child, no worth, go away." Her eyes burned with tears. She wanted to run, but before she could move, the human stepped forward. His voice firm. "That is enough," he said. The crowd fell silent, stunned. No one expected a human to speak against them. His eyes were steady, his tone sharp. "She is not nothing," he added. Her breath caught. No one had ever defended her before. Her people looked at him with anger, but he did not step back. He stood tall, like a wall between her and their hatred. The silence stretched, heavy, dangerous. She could feel the tension rising. She knew this moment would not end quietly. Something had been set in motion, something she could not control. When she returned home that night, her heart pounded. Part of her was afraid. Part of her was curious. Who was this human? Why did he not fear her people's judgment? Why did he care as she lay in the darkness? She whispered to herself, "Why me?" She did not know that this question would change everything, that this single meeting would rewrite her life. The voices of her people still echoed in her mind, heavy, cruel, but now, there was another voice, calm and steady, telling her that maybe, just maybe, she was not worthless after all. And with that thought, her story truly began. The next morning, the alien woman woke with tired eyes. Her sleep had been restless. The memory of the human's voice lingered, strong and clear. No one had spoken for her before. No one had dared. She could not push it away. She tried to tell herself it meant nothing, that humans often acted strange, that maybe he only wanted attention, but deep inside, a spark of curiosity refused to die. When she stepped outside, the sun was pale, the air cold. She thought she would walk quickly to the well, keep her eyes down, avoid all stares. But as she turned the corner, he was already there, waiting. The human stood calmly, arms crossed. His eyes scanning the street. When he saw her, he gave a small nod, as if he had been expecting her all along. Her chest tightened. "Why are you here again?" she asked, her tone defensive. He tilted his head. "Maybe I like the street," he answered. His voice calm, almost playful. She frowned. Unsure how to respond, no one ever teased her. No one ever treated her like she was part of normal conversation. "Usually, people only spat cruel words. You should not walk with me," she whispered, her eyes darting to the windows above where neighbors leaned to watch. "They will only insult you too." "Let them," he said simply, and he walked beside her, as if her words carried no weight. The whispers began again, rising from the crowd like smoke, sharp and ugly, but he did not react. He carried himself with quiet strength, his gaze forward, steady. She wanted to ask him why, but her throat was dry. She wanted to push him away, but her feet refused. She wanted to believe his calmness, but fear gnawed at her heart. At the well, she filled her bucket, her hands trembling. She waited for him to leave, but instead, he reached down and lifted the heavy bucket with one hand. "I'll carry this," he said, her eyes widened. "You don't need to." "I know," he replied. And he began walking. For a long moment she stood frozen, then hurried after him, her heart beating faster than it should. The walk was silent but not empty. The silence felt different, like it was full of meaning she could not yet name. She glanced at him once, then twice, his face steady, his step sure. When they reached her door, he placed the bucket down gently, then looked at her, not with pity, not with disgust, only with quiet respect. "You don't need to thank me," he said before she could speak. "I did not help you because you are weak. I helped because I wanted to." Her lips parted, but no words came. For years, she had been told she was useless. For years, every act toward her was laced with pity or cruelty. But his words carried no such weight. They felt clean, honest. That night, she could not eat. She sat staring at her wall, wondering, who was this man? Why did he look at her that way? Why did his voice linger longer than the voices of her own people? The next days repeated. Each morning he was there, waiting near the well. Each day he walked beside her, carried her burden, spoke little but always with kindness. At first, she feared it was a trick, a cruel joke. She waited for the moment when he would laugh at her, when he would reveal to the others how pathetic she was. But the moment never came. Instead, something else began to happen. She started to feel lighter, her steps slower, as if she wanted the walk to last longer. Her heart ached less at night. Her thoughts were not only shadows but also questions. Still, the people did not stop. Their whispers grew crueler. "Now she clings to a human," they sneered. "Even for her, that is low." She lowered her head, ready to flee. But once again he stepped forward, his voice clear. "She does not cling to me," he said. "I walk with her because she deserves company." The crowd stared, some laughed bitterly, others hissed, but none could answer him. His words were like stone, steady and sharp. Later, as they walked alone, she whispered, "Why do you do this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." He looked at her, his gaze deep. "Because worth is not decided by a crowd. Worth is seen by the heart, and I see you." Her breath caught, her chest heavy with emotions she could not name. No one had ever spoken to her this way. No one had ever seen her beyond the empty place her people called failure. That night she sat by her window, the stars above bright and endless. Her people's words still echoed, cruel and heavy. But now another voice echoed too. His voice calm, steady, telling her that maybe she was more than she believed. She pressed her hand against her chest, whispering softly, "Why me?" But this time the question carried less despair and more hope. The days passed, and the alien woman began to notice how the human's presence changed her world. He walked with her to the well. He carried her heavy buckets, and sometimes he even made her laugh, a sound she had not heard from herself in years. But her people noticed too. Their eyes followed her wherever she went. Their whispers turned into open taunts. What began as small insults in the shadows now grew into sharp attacks in the daylight. "She hides her shame behind a human," one man sneered. "Even humans are fools enough to waste time on her," another spat. The words hit her like stones, and each time she lowered her head, expecting the human to leave her side, expecting him to realize it was easier to walk away than to stand with her. But he did not leave. Instead, he stood straighter, his voice louder, his eyes sharper. He faced their cruelty without fear. One morning as they walked together, a group blocked their path. 3 alien women stood in front of her, their eyes cold, their voices cruel. "Do you think walking with him makes you valuable?" One hissed, "You will never matter," the second spat. Not to us, not to anyone. Her throat closed. Her chest heavy, she wanted to disappear. But before she could move, the human stepped forward, his gaze firm. "She matters to me," he said, his voice steady. "And that is enough." The street fell silent. His words cut through the air like a blade. The women blinked, their faces twisted with shock. No one had ever spoken like that. Not in her defense, not in defiance of their rules. Whispers spread faster than fire. Soon the whole district spoke of the alien woman and the human who stood beside her. Some mocked, some gossiped, but others watched with quiet unease. That night she sat in her home trembling, her hands over her face. "Why did he say that?" she whispered. "Why would he risk their hatred for me?" Her heart warred with itself. Part of her wanted to believe his words. Part of her feared they would destroy him. The next day she tried to walk alone. She left her home earlier than usual, hoping he would not find her, hoping to protect him from the shame she carried. But when she reached the well, he was already there, waiting, his arms folded, his eyes calm. "You thought you could sneak past me?" he said softly, a small smile touching his lips. Her heart skipped. "You should not be here," she said. "They will hate you too." "Let them hate," he answered. "Their hatred does not change who you are." Her chest tightened. His words sank deep, shaking the foundation of everything she had been taught. But the cruelty of her people did not stop. Each day the insults grew. Each day the stares sharpened. Rumors spread. Some even whispered that she should be cast out for bringing shame to her kind. One evening, as she walked home, a stone flew past her head. It crashed against the wall, and cruel laughter followed. "Useless," a voice shouted. "Worthless even to your own kind." Her knees trembled, her breath shallow. But then the human's hand touched her shoulder. Firm and steady, he turned to the shadows. His voice thundered. "Enough," he shouted. "If you think worth is measured by cruelty, then it is you who are worthless." The laughter stopped. Silence fell. His words carried power, not because he was stronger, but because he spoke the truth. That night she sat by the fire, her hands shaking. "They will never forgive me," she whispered. "They will punish me." The human sat across from her, his gaze steady. "Then I will stand with you," he said. Her eyes filled with tears. No one had ever said such words. No one had ever chosen to share her burden. But deep inside, fear grew. She knew her people would not stay silent forever. They would act, they would strike, and when they did, she feared it would not be her alone who paid the price. She lay awake in the dark, the human's words echoing in her mind, battling against the cruel voices of her people. She asked herself again and again, why me? And though she did not yet have the answer, she could feel it. Her life was no longer her own. It was changing, pulling her into something larger, something dangerous in the shadows of her world. The human's gaze had become a shield, but it had also made her a target, and soon, the world against them would show its full force. The whispers had turned into storms. The alien woman could no longer step outside without feeling the weight of every eye. Children were pulled away when she walked by. Doors closed in her face, and the air itself felt heavy with judgment. She had lived with shame before, but this was different. Now their hatred was louder, sharper, because a human stood at her side. They could not forgive that. They could not understand it. One evening, the leaders of her people called a gathering in the square. Torches burned high, the crowd pressed close. She was forced to stand before them, her hands trembling. Her eyes low, the chief speaker, an old woman with eyes like stone, raised her voice. "You are a failure to your kind," she declared. "A woman with no children has no place among us, and now you bring deeper shame. You walk with an outsider, a human, as if his presence could hide your emptiness." The crowd roared with agreement. Cruel voices echoed against the stone walls. Their anger felt like fire pressing against her skin. Her knees weakened, her heart pounded. She wanted to run, but she could not move. Then the human stepped forward, his figure sharp in the torchlight, his voice cutting through the noise. "You call her worthless," he said firmly, "but you are blind. You measure her worth by what she cannot give, and ignore what she already is." The crowd gasped, shocked that he would speak. Some shouted back, "She is nothing," one man barked. "She has no legacy, no child, no purpose," another cried. The human's eyes burned. "Then your measure of worth is broken," he replied. "For I have seen her strength, her kindness, her courage, and none of you can take that away." The silence that followed was sharp. The leaders stared at him with fury. The woman's breath caught in her chest. Never had anyone spoken for her like this. Never had anyone stood so boldly against her people. But the leaders did not bend. Their judgment was cruel. She will be punished, the chief declared. Her shame has spread too far. She will be cast out. And if the human stands with her, he too shall leave this place. The crowd erupted in cheers. Voices like thunder demanding her exile, demanding her end. Her chest tightened. Her vision blurred, tears welled in her eyes. It was over. The last piece of her fragile life was breaking. But the human did not flinch. He stepped closer to her, placing himself between her and the crowd. His voice steady. "Then we will leave together," he said. The words struck her heart, heavy and unreal. Her lips parted in disbelief. She whispered, "Why would you do this?" He looked at her, his eyes calm. "Because you are not worthless, and I will not let them decide who you are." The crowd roared with rage. Stones flew. One struck the human's shoulder. He staggered but did not fall. Another struck her leg. Pain shot through her body. She cried out. The human grabbed her arm, pulling her close, shielding her with his own body. More stones rained down, voices screaming. The world spinning with anger and hatred in that chaos. She felt something she had never felt before. Not fear, not shame, but a fierce warmth. The human's body shielded her. His courage wrapped around her like armor. By the time they escaped the square, both were bruised and bleeding. They stumbled into the shadows, breaths ragged, hearts racing. She sank to the ground, tears spilling down her face. "They will never stop," she whispered. "They will hunt us. They will destroy us." He knelt beside her, his hand gentle on her shoulder, his voice quiet but strong. "Then let them try," he said, "because together, we are stronger than their hate." Her chest heaved, her heart torn between fear and hope. She wanted to believe him, but the voices of her people still echoed in her head, louder than ever. That night, as the stars spread across the sky, she lay awake, her body aching, her mind restless. She asked herself again and again, "Can I endure this? Can I bear the weight of their hate?" And yet, in the silence, she remembered his words, his courage, his shield, and for the first time, she wondered if her worth did not lie in children, in acceptance or in approval, but in the strength to keep walking beside him. But the test was not over. She knew her people would strike again, harder, crueler. They would not rest until they broke her completely, and soon the fire of their judgment would return, fiercer than before, testing not only her heart, but the bond that had just begun to form. The night after the attack was long and heavy. The alien woman sat in the corner of her small home, her hands shaking, her leg throbbing from the stone that had struck her. The human sat across from her, his shoulder wrapped in cloth, stained dark from the wound. Neither spoke for a long time. The silence was filled with unspoken fears. She stared at him, wondering why he had not left, why he stayed, when her people's hatred could just as easily fall on him. Finally, she whispered, her voice trembling, "Why did you protect me? You could have walked away. No one would have blamed you." He lifted his head, his eyes calm but tired. "Because leaving you would have meant betraying myself," he said softly. "I could not stand by while they tried to break you." Her chest ached. Tears threatened her eyes. She pressed her hands together, her voice barely a whisper. "I am not worth this pain." He shook his head, his voice firm. "You are worth more than their cruelty, more than their judgment, worth more than you believe." The words struck her deeper than the stones had. She looked away, afraid that if she met his gaze for too long, she would break completely. The days that followed were not easy. Her people avoided her openly. Some spat when she passed, others shouted threats. The human walked beside her each time, his eyes steady, his back unyielding. But she saw the strain on his face, the way his wounds slowed him. One afternoon, as they carried water back, a group of young men blocked the path, their eyes full of anger. "You don't belong here," one snarled. "Neither of you." The human stepped in front of her, his body tense. "Then we will walk anyway," he answered. The men lunged, fists raised. She cried out, trying to pull him back, but he pushed her behind him. Their blows landed on him again and again. His lips split, his body bent, but he did not fall. He refused to step aside. Finally, the men left, muttering curses, laughing cruelly. She knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. "You cannot keep doing this," she whispered. "They will kill you." His breath was ragged, but his eyes still held fire. "Then I will die standing," he said, "because you are not alone, not anymore." Her hands shook as she touched his wounds, trying to clean the blood. In that moment, she realized something. His pain was now hers. His fight had become hers too. That night she spoke again, her voice quiet but steady. I do not understand why you care. I do not understand why you stay. But I cannot deny it anymore when you stand beside me. I feel less broken. The human gave a faint smile. His voice warmed despite his pain. Because you were never broken. You only believed their lies. Her heart trembled. His words cut through the chains she had carried for so long. For years she had been told she was nothing, and yet here was someone willing to bleed for her. Willing to stand in the fire for the first time. She felt something grow inside her. Not shame, not despair, but strength. It was fragile. Like a spark, but it was real. As days turned into nights and nights into mornings, their bond grew. Forged not in comfort, but in pain, in wounds, in blood, and in defiance of those who hated them. The people continued to sneer, continued to whisper, but she began to hear their voices less. Instead, she heard his steady, unshaken, reminding her of her worth, reminding her she was not alone. One evening, as they sat under the stars, he asked, "Do you know why they hate us so much?" She shook her head. "Because I am a failure, because you are an outsider." He looked at her, his voice calm. "No, because together, we prove their measure of worth is wrong. They cannot stand the truth, so they try to break us." Her eyes widened. His words sank deep and she realized he was right. Their anger was not only at her, it was at the bond she shared with him, a bond that defied their cruel rules. Her chest swelled with a strange courage. She whispered softly, "Then let them hate, because I will not run anymore." The human nodded, his eyes proud. "That is the strength I see in you." The fire that had once burned her down now began to burn within her. Not as shame, but as defiance, not as despair, but as hope. She still feared the storm to come. She still trembled at the thought of what her people might do next. But for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face it. Because she was no longer alone, and together, they had forged something unbreakable in the fire of pain. A bond stronger than the voices of hate. A bond that could not be taken away. And deep inside, she began to believe what she had once thought impossible. That maybe, just maybe, she was not worthless, but priceless. The days turned darker. The alien woman felt the tension rising like a storm. Her people no longer stopped at whispers or insults. Now they spoke of judgment, of exile, of ending the shame once and for all. One evening, a message arrived at her door. A group of guards stood outside, their faces cold, their voices harsh. "The council has spoken," one announced. "You are to stand before them at dawn. Your fate will be decided." Her hands trembled as she closed the door, her chest heavy. The human stepped forward, his eyes steady. "They mean to break you," he said quietly. "But you do not have to let them." Her voice cracked. "They will cast me out. They may kill you too if you stand with me." He placed a hand on her shoulder, firm and gentle. "Then let them, for I will not walk away." That night, she could not sleep. Her heart battled against itself. Fear clawed at her chest. Doubt filled her mind. But deep beneath the fear there was also something else, a strength she had never known before. At dawn, the square was full. Torches burned even in the early light. The council stood high above the crowd, their eyes sharp, their voices like blades. The chief speaker raised her hand. Silence fell. "This woman has failed her duty," she declared. "No child, no legacy, no value. And now she defies us further by walking with a human. A shame we cannot allow today. She will make her choice, exile into the wastelands, or prove her worth before us all." The crowd roared. Voices rising like thunder, the woman's heart pounded. Her breath shallow, she wanted to run, but her legs were rooted to the ground. Then the human stepped forward, his voice firm, cutting through the chaos. "Her worth is not yours to decide," he said. "Your measure is cruel and blind. You cannot see her courage, her kindness, her strength. But I do." The crowd hissed. Some shouted in anger. Others fell silent. Unsettled by his words, the chief speaker sneered. "Then let her prove it. Let her speak for herself. Let her tell us why she deserves to remain among us." The woman froze, her throat dry, all eyes on her. Years of insults weighed heavy on her back. Every cruel word whispered in the shadows now pressed against her chest. Her knees trembled. Her mind screamed to stay silent, to lower her head. But then she felt the human's gaze on her. Steady, unwavering, and she remembered his words. "Worth is seen by the heart." Slowly she lifted her head. Her voice soft at first, then stronger. "You call me worthless because I cannot give life," she said, her voice carrying across the square. "But life is not only in children, it is in how we care for each other. How we protect, how we stand, how we endure." The crowd shifted uneasily. Whispers rippled like wind through the gathering. She continued, her voice gaining strength. For years I believed your words. I thought myself broken. I thought myself nothing, but I was wrong. Because I have faced your cruelty and still stand. Because I have found courage when you tried to bury me in shame. Because even when you cast me aside, I found someone who sees me as I am. The human's chest swelled with pride. His eyes glistened as he watched her speak. You say I have no worth, she declared. Her voice fierce now, but I tell you, my worth does not belong to you. It belongs to me. The square fell silent, her words hung in the air like fire. The people stared at her, some in anger, some in shock, and a few with something else, uncertainty, doubt, perhaps even respect. The council muttered among themselves, their faces twisted with frustration. The chief speaker's voice cracked like a whip. You defy us. You defy the order of our people. The human stepped closer, his voice firm. No, she defines herself. And that is her right. The silence stretched. The crowd restless. The weight of the moment pressed heavy. The woman's heart pounded. She had spoken the truth. She had faced them. But the cost was yet to come. Finally, the council spoke again. Then let the people decide, the chief declared. If they see her worth, she may stay. If not, she will be cast into exile with the human. The crowd erupted into chaos, voices clashing. Some shouted for her removal. Others hesitated, uncertain, shaken by her courage. As the noise swirled around her, she stood taller than she ever had before. Her hands no longer trembling, her eyes no longer lowered. For the first time in her life, she had spoken her truth, and no matter what they chose, she knew she had already won something greater. The choice of worth had been made not by them, but by her. The square was still filled with noise, voices clashing like waves. Some demanded her exile. Some whispered that maybe she had spoken truth. The alien woman stood tall, her heart beating fast. The human stood beside her, his presence a shield. The council waited, their eyes sharp, their patience thin. Finally, the chief raised her hand for silence. The people are divided, she announced. But division is weakness if she cannot unite us. She cannot remain, her words echoed. Heavy as stone, the woman's chest tightened. Fear whispered again, but this time, she did not lower her head. This time, she held her ground. She looked out at the crowd, her voice rising, steady and clear. You have called me worthless, she said, because I cannot give you children. But worth is not measured by what someone cannot do. Worth is measured by who they are, by what they give of themselves. I may not carry life in my body, but I carry life in my heart. The crowd stirred, eyes shifting, whispers breaking into silence. She pointed toward the human, her voice stronger. This man has stood beside me when you all turned away. He has shed blood for me. He has faced your hatred without fear. If he can see my value, why can't you? A murmur rose. Softer than before, some looked away, ashamed. Others frowned, struggling with doubt. The human stepped forward, his voice ringing out. Your people will be remembered not for how many children they raise, but for how they treat those who have none. Strength is not in numbers, it is in compassion. It is in the courage to see worth where others refuse to look. Silence fell heavier than any roar. The words hung in the air, undeniable. For the first time, some heads bowed, not in hate, but in thought. Even the council could not hide their unease. Their measure of worth had been challenged, broken by truths too clear to deny. The chief speaker's face twisted. She tried to speak, but the sound of children laughing nearby caught the crowd's ears. Little ones who had followed their parents now looked at the woman with wide eyes, not with hate, not with judgment, but with innocence. One small child stepped forward, tugging at her hand, whispering softly, You are kind. Her heart broke open. Tears filled her eyes. She knelt, touching the child's face gently. Thank you, she whispered. The crowd shifted again. The innocence of a child held more power than all the cruel words of the elders. Slowly, voices softened. Some began to murmur, Maybe she is not worthless, maybe we were wrong. The council, seeing the change, tightened their jaws, but they could not stop it. The people were beginning to see differently. That night, the woman returned to her home. The human at her side, the air felt lighter. Though danger had not passed, something had shifted. Something powerful. She sat by the fire, her eyes bright with new strength. For so long, I believed them, she whispered. But today I believed myself. I am not broken, the human smiled. His voice warm. You are not broken, you never were. You are priceless. Her tears fell freely now. Not from shame, but from release, from freedom. The chains of years had begun to fall away, replaced by something far greater. In the days that followed, her people remained divided. Some still clung to cruelty, but many began to soften. Some even greeted her without scorn. And though it was only a beginning, it was more than she had ever hoped for. The human never left her side. He walked with her through every street, no longer hiding, no longer caring for whispers. His presence was proof that her worth was real. Together they built something new, not with children, not with approval, but with courage and truth. Slowly the people began to see, slowly change began, and in her heart she knew the truth. Worth had never been about what she lacked. It had always been about who she was, about the strength to endure, the courage to stand, and the love she had found beside her one evening under the stars. The human looked at her, his eyes soft. "Do you see now?" he asked gently. "Do you see yourself as I see you?" She smiled, her voice steady. "Yes," she whispered. "I am priceless." The stars burned brighter above them. The world still harsh, still uncertain, but within her, there was no more emptiness, no more chains, for she had chosen her worth, and no one could take it away. And so her story, once filled with whispers of shame, became a story of strength, a story of defiance, a story of a bond that proved worth is not given by others, but found within. She was no longer worthless. She was no longer broken. She was priceless beyond measure.